Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, everyone. Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. How you doing today? Hopefully you're ready to go. Looking forward to some exciting talk today, which I think we're going to be able to provide you here on the show. Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Ray Flowers is hosting it. That's me. Wednesdays, I'm joined with by Marmondo Marsal. Thursdays by Tyler Beaker. Fridays by Russell Clay. Now, things are different today. We had a little bit of a switch up here. We had to move the guys around a little bit, so we're going to change things up. I'll get the little graphic on the screen here in a second. But the bottom line is today, we're still going to be talking football about a half hour in. What we're going to be talking today, though, instead of Armando Marsal, who will be on tomorrow, today we're going to be talking with Tyler Beaker. So look forward to that. Tyler will be joining us in about a half an hour to talk a little football. We'll quiz him on players like Deshaun Watson and Jalen Polk and Adam Thielen, Audric, Estime, Javonte Williams, Malike, Nabors, Marvin Harrison Jr., rankings, projections, all that kind of stuff. So we'll talk to him in about a half an hour. Today, though, we're talking baseball at the start of the show, and today is starting pitcher day. Monday was infielders. Yesterday was outfielders. Today's starting pitchers. Obviously, tomorrow is relief pitchers. We're doing the show here where we're talking about all of that, and then we have the accompanying article over at FantasyGuru.com. So make sure to consume this however you do, and then head over to FantasyGuru.com and to click on the article that accompanies whichever podcast you're listening to. You can listen to the podcast by simply going to FantasyGuru.com, clicking the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. You can scroll down there and find Fantasy Sports Daily. You can go to Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, type in Fantasy Sports Daily. We'll pop up there as well. You can watch us at Facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ or YouTube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. Either of those last two, if you're there, you can ask questions, leave comments, all of that live that we address at the end of the show. So on Facebook and on YouTube, you can do that. You can also follow us at Fantasy Guru site on Twitter X, but you can't leave comments there. Again, today's starting pitching, and as you can see there on the screen, we've got a bunch of injuries to talk about and performances. I didn't want to focus directly, or at least spend too much time on the injury piece because, it is what it is. And, we're at the halfway point. Obviously, we're past the halfway point. We're at the halfway point here. And for those people that have had issues with the first half, it's only going to get worse in the second half. I know a lot of people out there are counting on guys like Bobby Miller and Walker Buehler or Robbie Ray or Jeffrey Springs. A lot of these guys that have struggled in the first half with health, guys we haven't seen in the first half coming back from injuries, surgeries. A lot of people are counting on those kind of guys, and maybe they come through. Maybe they do. In fact, a lot of us need players like that to come through because I got to tell you, going this past weekend in particular, going through the waiver wire, it's a mess. And I am in deeper leagues than many of you, but I know that a lot of you are in head-to-head leagues and you're streaming pitchers all the time, every single week, and you're looking at these guys, and it gets really difficult trying to, prognosticate what a 23-year-old that's called up from AA is going to do in his first major league outing. And it's like a lot of you need that kind of performance. You need something. You need 5 innings of 2-run baseball. It's really tough. And unfortunately, I think that this is going to be something that continues out through the entirety of the second half. We're going to see guys get starts skipped. We're going to see players, we'll talk about one of them here in a bit, get starts lowered, like we saw with Garrett Crochet. He only threw a couple of innings. This is going to happen all throughout the second half. Maybe we know, maybe we don't know. In the case of Crochet, at least they told us before the game started, so we had we could have pulled him out, that kind of a thing. But it's going to be a messy second half, so keep the faith. So some of the guys that were injured, Spencer Strider's the big one, obviously, at the top. Blew his arm out. It's why you don't take pitching early in drafts. We've talked about it forever. Won't belabor the point here. Remember this in 2025. Don't do it. Do not do it. I've been saying this forever. Forever. Do not take pitching in the first or second round. It's a losing battle, period. Spencer Strider was the number one guy this year that went down. Unclear if he's going to be ready to go for week 1 next year. It would be a stretch. So probably mid-season for him, back to being fully Spencer Strider, maybe June, something like that. We'll see. Yamamoto was recently transferred to the 60-day injured list. He can't be activated until August sometime. He's coming back from the rotator cuff issue. He was pitching really well, and then he had a hiccup. Am I wrong with that? Let me pull him up real quick. I don't think Yamamoto had any issues with health. Yamamoto, Ray, learn to spell. Yamamoto. Yeah, there you go. I don't think he had any issues with health in Japan, did he? Japanese leg stats. Hide partial rows. 190, 170. Last 3 years, he's averaging 185 innings pitched. Comes here, those 73 innings and 74 innings, ends up on the injured list. He'll be back in the second half. Later August, September, expectation is he will be back and be pitching well at that point. But rotator cuff situations can be difficult. Blake Snell finally has thrown a couple of nice outings here for the Giants. It took him half the season to pitch like the guy the Giants gave $30 million to. We've talked about him forever on the show. Garrett Cole has returned from his injury, another one of the elite level pitchers on draft day, another guy who's disappointed. He's been effective-ish since his return, but has not been the dominant Garrett Cole he was drafted to be. That pick has obviously been a bust. We're just hoping now in the second half he can be a better than league average pitcher. Bobby Miller, he's demoted because they can't quite figure out what's going on. His velocity's down, but he's still throwing 95, 96. The pitch shape looks okay. It's just a mess with Bobby Miller. And it's kind of echoing Walker Buehler. And don't forget, Tyler Glasnow. I didn't put Tyler Glasnow on the list because it was a recent injury and he didn't really miss time. But the Dodgers got all kinds of pitching issues here. All kinds of pitching issues. And the Dodgers baby their pitchers. They give them extra days rest. They pull them out early with this stuff doesn't work. We know it. I know it. You know it. Teams try. Doesn't work. So Bobby Miller is supposed to be healthy, but where is the extra velocity? And what is going on here that they can't figure out? The pitch's velocity is down a little bit, causing the movement to be down a little bit, and it's causing him to be hit around more than he should be with this stuff, even with this diminished stuff right now. So we'll hope for a return to at least usefulness in the second half with Bobby Miller, but that's been a frustrating situation. Jesus Luzardo, multiple injuries on the 60-day injury list now. His season's been a disaster. His teammate Yuri Perez was a disaster. He went down at the start of the year. I think he was my 5th or 6th round pick in a couple leagues. I'm sure he was for you too. His season was total loss, the elbow injury. Merrill Kelly, who'd been Mr. Stability the last few years, just giving you quality innings, nothing outstanding, but just 180 innings of good work. He's been out for months. Joe Musgrove's been in and out of the lineup. He's been ineffective when on the field and in and out of the lineup with health. Shane Bieber done for the year with his elbow issue. Justin Verlander started late. Then he got out there. Then he hurt his neck, and a neck tweak has taken him a month and a half to return. Justin Verlander is not the pitcher he was anyway before injuries accrued in his background before he hit 40 years of age. Not surprising there, but he has slalomed quickly down to league average. And now he can't even stay on the field. So that's a problem. Walker Buehler is, I hope that this is what I'm about to say is totally wrong. But Walker Buehler is the poster child for why when people say, oh, your arm has got an issue, go have the surgery. Come on, just get it done now. He's the poster child for why that's not always a good thing. He had the surgery on his elbow, and it's been 2 years, and he's a disaster. We've talked about all the setbacks that weren't setbacks. We talked about all the delays. How about that? Is that a fair way to say it? All the delays. We've talked about that forever. The stuff isn't there. The performance isn't there. The results aren't there. We don't even know when he's going to be back at the big league. It's just he's not the guy he was before elbow surgery. He's just not. And it's been a long time, and he's still not that guy. Brian Wu has pitched very well. Obviously, he had issues with his leg, his hamstring most recently. Before that, it was an elbow issue, forearm issue, but it wasn't. He's been really good when he's out there, but again, he throwing 45 innings. It hasn't been enough. Gavin Williams just recently returned from his forearm issue with the Guardians, one of the better pitching prospects in baseball. Someone had a really strong second half last year. His start to the season was delayed for months. Eduardo Rodriguez, I don't even know. I guess he still pitches, Eduardo Rodriguez. Braxton Garrett, waited a long time to see him. He comes back, then his shoulder goes. Now he's gone again. Marlins have lost every pitcher. We've talked about that forever too. Kyle Bradish had the arm issue, took time off, came back from the arm issue. Now he's dealing with the arm issue again. His season's over. Christian Javier, his season's over. There's more guys. This is just, I didn't want to fill up the screen, with 1,000 guys. This has just been the nature of the game. And it's going to continue to be that way in the second half. So everyone, as people, someone asked me the other day, and it was pretty funny. I did a list here. We talked about it on the show, and there's an article over at fantasyguru.com where I looked at the top 150 players in the player rater, just offensive players, just players. And I said, do you want to add them, hold them, or get rid of them? Like buy or sell, right? I did that, and I did it for all top 150 players according to the player rater. And someone said, Ray, are you going to do it for pitching? And I jokingly said, but not really jokingly, what pitcher are we dropping? I mean, are there really any drop pitchers? Are there pitchers that are performing above their head? Sure. We talked about Louis Hill a lot, right? Sure. You going to give him up? What are you going to turn to? I mean, there's nothing to turn to. So yeah, I kind of jokingly said, yeah, but I mean, that's where we're at. There really is no pitcher that you're going to get rid of. So that's the pitching side of things on the injury front. Now let's talk a little bit about the performance situation. Chris Sale has been absolutely spectacular. Chris Sale is having his best season in years. Chris Sale has always been effective, even throughout the injuries, but he's just simply not been on the field. He already has thrown a 4-year high in innings pitched right now at the All-Star break. He's 35 years old. He's coming off a season where, he threw 102 innings and he was very effective, but that's kind of the thought that, if he can throw 110 innings for the Braves this year, be healthy later in the year, that's a great move for them. Well, he's thrown 110 innings at the break. He leads baseball with 13 victories. He's got a whip of .95. His strikeout rate is 32%. This is not quite prime Chris Sale, but it's damn close. And it's been remarkable. Now, my concern, as it should be for you too, the last time that he threw 160 innings was 2017. A long time ago. So he's at 110 innings, which again is a 4-year high already. And remember, one of the strengths he's had here the last 2 months is every start is 6 or 7 innings. Like he's just going deep into the game. Can he throw 180 innings this year? Would they let him throw 180 innings this year? Because again, the Braves are obviously looking, toward the playoffs. They've got to get to the playoffs, right? So there's that too. They're 8.5 games behind the Phillies right now, so the NL East looks like it's out of reach. But they're trying to make the playoffs. They may not really be able to afford to rest him here. So that's a fascinating one to watch. He's been spectacular to date, but there are concerns obviously with workload moving forward. Doug M in the chat room said that I was ticked Skubal didn't get to start the All-Star game. Just saying. I mean, to me, and again, this is me, the All-Star game doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's, in the old days when I was a kid, they used to wear their own uniforms, which I wish they still did. Guys that were voted to start played 6 innings. There was not this need to get everyone involved in the game. They didn't use 9 pitchers. Like it's just, the game is different now. Some teams don't want their guys pitching at the All-Star break. Some teams, we talked about this. They changed like Chris Sale. They changed the pitching slate around in season, not so they won't be available in the All-Star game, but with no concern whether the guy's going to be available to pitch in the All-Star game. We have guys pulling out of the All-Star game because they're tired. Like this, it is what it is. I understand Doug being disappointed, but at the same time, it is what it is, the All-Star game. Skubal, pulling back to the important thing for us in the fantasy space, Skubal's been fantastic. And he, he's got 140 strikeouts and 116 innings. He has pitched almost exactly as effectively as he did last season. Now, last season was 15 starts. This year is 19 starts. The question is, can we get that 175 innings from him? If we do, he's going to be a fantasy ace. That's where we're at right now. The velocity is intense. The pitch mix is great. The strikeout ability is through the roof. He doesn't beat himself. He's walked 21 guys in 19 starts. He has pitched phenomenally well. Everyone that drafted him got that payoff. The question now is, can he give you those 175 innings and vie for the Cy Young Award? Or is he going to struggle? He's never thrown 150 innings previously in 4 seasons at the big league level. Seth Lugo has been he's not a league winner, right? He's Seth Lugo. But he's been one of the best reserve round, early waiver round pickups in the game, period. He's 11-4 with a 2.5 ERA and a 1.1 whip. He has been absolutely phenomenal. He is 25 innings away from a career high at the big league level that he threw last year. That might scare you a little bit, which I get, but he's 34. He's not likely to have start skipped. He's not likely to be babied. He's working on a $15 million a year contract, which is a lot for the Royals, but they need him to take the ball and give innings like he has done. There certainly could be a slowdown workload-wise. There's likely to be a slowdown performance-wise. His ERA is 2.5. I'd be very surprised if his ERA the rest of the way wasn't at least 3.5, maybe even higher, maybe even 4 the rest of the way. He's better than league average, but not significantly. His performance to date has been significantly better than that. It's not going to match in the second half what we saw in the first half, but Seth Lugo's just been terrific. Ranger Suarez. Ranger Suarez will be written about today in the article, and I would encourage everyone to look at that because while his numbers are stupendous overall, he has really hit the wall hard the last 3 starts. He's been brutalized is too strong a word, but he's been battered this last 3 starts. To hit the All-Star break with 10 victories to tie a career best, with a 2.8 ERA and a 1.04 WHIP, unqualified success because he too might have been drafted. Maybe it was a waiver wire pickup, really, just like Seth Lugo. It depends how deep your league is. If he was even drafted. He's got a 4-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. He's been fantastic. There is some fortune involved. His batting average of balls in play is low. His left on base percentage is a little high. His home run to fly ball ratio is about on his career mark, and he doesn't allow a lot of fly balls. So we're not overly concerned about home runs becoming an issue for him, but he's likely to see some more base hits. Beyond that, he's only thrown 130 innings at the big league level a single time. That was back in 2022. Last year he threw 125 innings. This year he's at 114. So he's another guy that's starting to run up against, and it's the All-Star break. His average last year is 135 innings, and he's already at 114. So he really needed this time off. We'll see. I've been most impressed probably by a strikeout total, given the fact that he's not a strikeout arm. His 25% strikeout rate is well above his 22% career mark. If he can sustain that, that will go a long way to allowing him to have success, or at least continued success in the second half. But there are obvious concerns, and we've seen that the last couple of times out with Ranger Suarez. Tanner Houck, same thing as Suarez. Tanner Houck probably wasn't drafted in most leagues. If he was, it was very late. He's only 8-6, but he's got an ERA of 2.5. He's got a WHIP of 103. He's got basically a strikeout an inning, and he threw for 2 months was quality start, just every time out, quality start. And there are obvious reasons to expect his ratios to significantly increase. I think that it's fair to look at him and he's already thrown a career high in the big leagues in innings pitched. I think it's fair to look at Tanner Houck and say, look, if he can be league average in the second half, we're in good shape. I don't expect the continuation of that first half performance with him either. You can see that start to rear its head here as well. His last 3 starts, 11 runs in 13 innings, 8 runs in 1 game. Next time out, he only made it through 3 1/3 innings before he got pulled because he walked 4 guys. Did have a quality start with 6 shutout innings against the Athletics in his last start before the break. So the unevenness that has not been part of his game all season long has started to show itself of late. So again, I think this is a little bit of a workload issue. It's a little bit of an equalization issue too with some of the data, but it's a workload issue probably. He'll continue to take the ball for the Red Sox and continue to be useful in the fantasy space, but expect that pullback in the second half. Garrett Crochet is interesting. We saw there's all the rumors that Garrett Crochet is going to get traded, and we saw his last outing go 2 innings here. I'll say it this way. I don't know who is going to trade for. I read this everywhere. He's going to be a dominant second half pitcher, and he's going to help win fantasy leagues and all that. As of right now, Garrett Crochet in 2024 has thrown more innings than he threw in 2020, 21, 22, 2021. Let me say this again. I can't even go so excited. 20, 21, 22, 23. The last 4 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. He has thrown more innings this year than those last 4 seasons combined. How the hell is he going to throw 175 innings this year? And I was joking with Phil Backer. If he throws 175 innings this year, it's malpractice. I'm not a big one of pitch counts have to matter and innings pitch have to matter above all else, right? We've talked about this a lot. But he's already thrown more innings than he threw through the last 4 years. How many innings does he have left? How many bullets does he have left? What happens when his arm gets hurt? In retrospect, people say, well, geez, man, they let him throw more innings than he threw the last 4 years. So I don't know who's going to trade for him, given the uncertainty there. And beyond that, even if he stays healthy, is his performance got any chance of matching the first half dominance when his workload is going to be so damn high? But taking nothing away from his performance, he has been a star. 150 strikeouts in 107 innings with a .95 WHIP. and he's even 6-6 for the worst team in baseball. He has been terrific, absolutely terrific. Luis Heel rebounded a little bit here at the end after some beatdowns that he took. There was a lot of discussion about his release point changing and all that. I don't doubt that's the case. I think that was the case. The last 2 times out, 2 quality starts, and so there's hope again. We've talked about with Heel again, the same thing. Heel is already blowing past his workload limits. Last year, he threw 4 innings. The year before that, he threw 25 innings. The year before that, he threw 80 innings. He's already at 102. So he's already at a 4-year high in innings pitched. Oh, and by the way, in 2020, he didn't throw a pitch. So he's already at a 5-year high in innings pitched. How long is this going to last? We've been talking about this forever. I mean, even Ken Rosenthal was reporting that the Yankees want to figure out a way to slow him down so they have him later in the year. They just haven't been able to do that because of their pitching staff and because, for the most part, he's been so effective. But that's another guy that has been out of this world good. Recent hiccup performance-wise and certain workload concerns moving forward. He's getting a theme here? A little bit of a theme? Okay. Reynaldo Lopez, workload concerns? Yes, of course, Reynaldo Lopez got workload concerns because, again, theme of the day. But Lopez has been terrific. And he has been actually, I don't even know if terrific's the right word. He's been amazing. Like, he's 7-3 with a 1.9 ERA for the Braves. Got basically a strikeout inning. This has been just phenomenal. Now, his batting average of balls in play, right at his career mark, totally fine there. His left-on base percentage of 87% is virtually impossible to sustain. Virtually impossible. Like, every year, there's one guy, maybe one guy at like 83%, 84%. No one's at 87%. It's not sustainable. So that's a concern. Obvious logic is a concern. His ERA is likely to double in the second half from 1.9. If it did, he'd still be effective at 3.9, still be better than the league average. I look at the strikeout rate. It's very solid. I look at the walk rate. It's very solid. If he can continue that, he will continue to be effective. He has been fortunate in the home run column. His home run to fly ball ratio is 6%. That's 55% of his career level. That number's certain to rise too. There's been some concerns about workload with him because, again, he's been in the bullpen the last 4 years. He's already thrown more innings right now than he has the last 5 seasons at the big league level. Same thing. Great work, but Paul Skenes, absolutely fantastic, culminating, in that All-Star game effort. What can we say about him? I mean, he's just been terrific. He shouldn't have an overt concern about workload, unlike a lot of these other guys. We'll see what the Pirates choose to do. Theoretically, the Pirates are in the playoff hunt right now. They're 500. Yeah. But yeah, obviously, if there's any signs of concern with him, they'll shut him down because they're thinking the future with him. But Paul Skenes has been just dynamic. His teammate shut down with a grade 2 lat strain was Jared Jones. Jared Jones, out of nowhere, everyone was talking Paul Skenes in the preseason. It's actually Jared Jones that's made the 16 starts. He's got a 3.5 ERA. He's got a strikeout an inning. He's got a 1.11 whip. He has been fantastic. He is down with that lat issue. It's not the end of the world because, again, teams that aren't in the playoffs have no reason to push youngsters that they're planning to build their rotation around in terms of workload. So this actually does back him off a little bit. They have been very cautious with his workload. We've famously berated the team a little bit for pulling him after 5 shutout innings and 59 pitches in one effort earlier this season. They're very cautious with workload with him. They've managed him very well. When you make 16 starts and you throw 91 innings, some quick math is barely 5 innings an outing. So they've been very cautious there, despite how effective he has been, and he has been terrific. Gavin Stone has been required to step up for the Dodgers, and that's not something that was expected, and he deserves full credit for doing so. Looking at the Dodgers right now, we talked about Walker Buehler being down. We talked about Tyler Glasnow being down. We talked about Yamamoto being down. We talked about Bobby Miller. Did I mention Bobby Miller being demoted? Clayton Kershaw hasn't come back. Dustin May had a setback. His season is over. Tony Gonsolin's out for the season. Catastrophic issues on the hill for the Dodgers. So much so that even with all that pitching, there's people talking about them needing to make a trade, which is shocking because it seemed like when the season began, they had 9 starting pitchers. Gavin Stone has stepped up. He's made 17 starts, not dominant starts, but extremely effective starts. The problem in a fantasy perspective is though he's 9-3 with a 3.3 ERA, Stone doesn't miss bats. His strikeout rate of 19% is way below the league average. He is likely to be the first guy to go when the rotation gets stuffed. They're not going to remove James Paxton, right? All the other names that I mentioned there, they would be ahead of Stone. I don't know if Stone could have success out of the bullpen, though. So there is a chance. There's a chance that he makes 30 starts this year for this team. But of all the guys we talked about here, Stone is probably the least exciting in the second half because, again, he just doesn't miss bats. But he has been phenomenal this season. That changeup is rocking and rolling. A lot of fortune with the home run to fly ball ratio. A lot of fortune with the left on base rate. Very easy to see that 3.3 ERA becoming 4.3 in the second half. But Gavin Stone has done a great job in the first half. Mr. Waldron, Matt Waldron, out of nowhere, I don't remember, honestly, anyone, and I mean this seriously, talking about Matt Waldron at any point in the preseason at all. Do you remember? If you do, let me know here in Discord because I don't remember it. He's a knuckleballer who leads with the knuckleball, but he throws his other pitches. Very non-traditional. Most knuckleballers throw the pitch 80% of the time, right? Or 90% of the time. It's the pitch they throw. In his case, it's not how it works. His knuckleball, he throws at 38%. So it's his number one pitch, but he throws a bunch of other stuff up there. And he's been terrific. He's made 19 starts for the Padres. He's only 5-8, but he's got a 3.7 ERA. He's got a 1.17 WHIP. He has been the perfect addition off the waiver wire when you've had injuries. I know a lot of you probably added him because you're like, San Diego's a decent place to pitch, and I need a healthy guy, and he's had a couple of nice starts. Okay. He's been a very stabilizing, terrible sentence, but a stabilizing force on the hill, and that's exactly what was needed because of all the injuries we're dealing with in the first half. Pablo Lopez, there'll be more about him in the article over at fantasyguru.com today that accompanies this video/podcast. Lopez has been a mess. His ERA is 5. He also has 121 strikeouts in 104 innings and a 1.18 WHIP. So his strikeout rate is a little bit better than the last 3 years. His WHIP is almost exactly the same as the last 4 years. Uneven, disappointing, but still potential in the second half. Zach Eflin has dealt with some injuries. Zach Eflin has dealt with the obvious pullback that he was going to experience after that career season last year. He still made 17 starts, still has a 3.99 ERA and a 1.12 WHIP. So a lot of people seem really disappointed in Zach Eflin, which I don't really get, for being honest. I mean, what were you expecting? I mean, a 1.19 WHIP, a 1.12 WHIP, that plays everywhere. Now, maybe you were expecting the strikeout rate to continue. It was 27% this year. Last year, it's only 19% this year. Okay, I get that. Career number is 21%. He's closer to his career average this year than he was last year. I think that he's been quite effective. It's been uneven, but still, at the end of the day, these numbers play. I think if he was, instead, he's 5-6 for Tampa. If those 11, if he was 7-4, wouldn't you feel a lot better? I'd say you probably would. And then finally, Chris Bassitt. Chris Bassitt is not sexy or exciting at all. And for the first time in a while, Chris Bassitt's WHIP has gotten out of control. His WHIP is 1.4. He is a guy who's, since 2019, his WHIP has been under 1.2 every season. This year, it's 1.43. Why is that? Well, his batting average on balls in play is way up. It's artificially elevated. It's 45 points above his career level. That's not likely to continue, especially when you notice that the launch angle is basically the same as last year. The barrel rate's down a little bit. The exit velocity is the same. Hard hit rate is up a couple percentage points, but same kind of thing. Ground ball to fly ball ratio is right on his career number. Like, there's a lot of similarity here. Some moderate defense behind him, some bad luck. The real issue for him is the walk rate. He's had a walk rate of under 8% 5 consecutive years. This year, the mark is 9.6%. Given that he can't erase guys with the strikeout, having a walk rate elevate to a number that's not crazy, but elevate to 9.6 is not something that works for him. So that's the real key. Can he reduce the walk rate moving forward? I think it's very reasonable to suggest that, his WHIP comes down a little bit. Maybe his ERA goes up a little bit, but he's going to be a usable guy moving forward, someone that should take the ball and give you innings of quality, even if they're not super exciting. So there's a little bit of a rundown for baseball. And remember, this podcast video will be accompanied by an article over at fantasyguru.com. In fact, you might be watching this there because this video is actually attached to the article. Tomorrow here on the show, and then obviously over at the website, we'll continue to wrap up the first half of performance. We'll talk relief pitchers. So that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. Later today from 3 to 6 Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, myself and Jeff Manns will be on. We'll be talking Patriots and Seahawks coaching. We'll break down Zay Flowers. He's our player of the day. We'll talk about 5 ways to improve the NFL. We'll also talk about auctions. A lot of talk about auctions. I think we're going to spend a couple of segments on the show today. So that's 3 to 6 Eastern on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. All right. So with all that talk about baseball and then some transition into football, let's make the transition into football complete. Let's bring in a man who is stepping in for a coworker, changing his schedule completely to help out a coworker today. And that's Tyler Beaker, who joins us. Tyler, normally on Thursdays, but this week is joining Wednesday. Tomorrow will be Armando Marsal. On Friday will be Russell Clay. Tyler, how you doing today, bud?
Doing great, Ray. Looking at some current betting lines right now, trying to find if there's any late futures that are worth taking a stab at right now in the NFL market. It's kind of a dead period right now. Still waiting for training camps to finally open. Sounds like this weekend we'll start getting some more action. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing right now. Just taking it easy, looking at some futures and trying to get some more bets in over at our betting package.
Yeah, and speaking of the betting package, all the packages are available over fantasyguru.com. Click the subscribe tab in the top right corner. You can get seasonal football, you can get DFS football, you can get wagering football, you can get all 3 of them if you want, which I would recommend. You can also get the all-in VIP Platinum package, which is every sport, everything we offer. That's available too at the site. You're kind of spearheading the wagering guide. And when we say guide, let's remind everyone, we call everything a guide because that's the nomenclature. Everything is for the season. So if you get the betting guide, or it's for the entire season. The betting guide is actually a part of the seasonal package. Is that correct, Russell? Excuse me, Tyler?
It will be not part for the seasonal, but it will be part of our draft guide where you'll at least be able to read it. Right. But that's all just kind of more of a learning and introductory kind of package where we're discussing how to bet sides, totals, teasers, player props, that kind of thing. Just kind of getting your feet wet for those that haven't dove really into the betting yet. It's starting to become more and more popular as more and more states allow mobile sports betting. So we just want to have our subscribers be knowledgeable bettors.
Yeah, and to be clear, if I wasn't clear there, we have a package that Tyler is talking about that will explain to you how to bet. If you want the actual betting advice we give, you have to get the DFS. You have to get the wagering package itself. So this is kind of just an intro. It's kind of a gateway, like Tyler's talking about, but a way to at least, even if you don't get the wagering package with us, even if you're going to do it on your own, at least you'll be, prepped. So you'll at least know kind of what you're doing. Tyler also has a huge section of best ball information in the draft guide over at fantasyguru.com. So he's got rankings for that available. What websites did you actually cover with the rankings there, Tyler, for the best ball?
We covered Drafters, we covered Underdog, and we covered FFPC over on as part of our draft guide. Basically rankings, strategy sessions, tournament tactics. Like if you're trying to win $1 million or if you're just trying to double your entry, we've got some content over there on the site for you to help you become a profitable best ball player, which has become a very, very popular type of fantasy. Everybody is playing it these days. Starting to see more and more big tournaments being produced by these websites. It's a great way to spend the offseason. It helps you prepare for the upcoming redraft season, whether that be your home league, your work league, your high stakes leagues. Just getting those reps in and seeing how teams are built, even if it's a slight difference being best ball versus redraft, it's very, very valuable and a great way to practice. So highly recommend checking that content out.
And you can see there on the screen. And for those of you that can't, we do have a deal with drafters.com. As Tyler mentioned there, he's got that covered over in the draft guide at fantasyguru.com. If you're new to Drafters, you never signed up over there, never had an account, use the promo code ELITE. That gets you a 100% deposit match. If you're a returning customer at drafters.com, you've already been over there, you've enjoyed what they're doing, use the promo code ELITE10. That gets you a 10% match. And head over to drafters.com because, again, there's literally millions of dollars on the line here. For you to take advantage of and get an opportunity to get a piece of. By the way, before we dive into the questions, Tyler, how many best ball leagues are you in at the moment? Do you know?
North of 75. Working on it right now. We've got a bunch going concurrently in slow drafts. So every now and then I'll just log in at the top of the hour and be like, oh, here's 2 picks on this site. Here's 1 pick on this site. And then, but I'm probably north of 75 at this point.
Yeah, so basically your entire year's salary is gone. No, I'm just kidding. That's a significant. What's the minimum? It's $10 minimum to join.
Well, it depends what contest you're on. Drafters and their main best ball championship is a $15 entry fee. Underdogs is $25. So they both vary site to site. One offers a little bit more money. Underdog offers a little bit more money up top. Drafters is a different strategy where it's just straight out weeks 1 through 17, most points scored. So it's very, very flat in terms of that. And I mean, both sites this year, very flat payouts, where in years past, it would be super top heavy, where if you weren't getting first place, that like $3 million top prize that they used to offer, there's a huge step down from like 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 20 to 50.
Right.
This year, both sites very flat. So it's a great year to get in on best ball.
Yeah, I think that's better too. I hate it when I get it. Oh, $2 million prize and third place get you $50,000. Whoopie do. All right, let's dive into some of the player information, Tyler. And, I'm going to start out with just asking you a simple question that may not have a simple answer. Who is Deshaun Watson in 2024? At one point, star. Now, who is Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, he really hasn't been the same since his Houston days. He's sporting a sub 60% completion rate, a pedestrian 6.5 yards per attempt mark. That's during his first 2 years there with the Browns. Through his first 4 years with Houston, though, he averaged a 67.8% and 8.3 yards per attempt. Like, those were elite numbers. He was a tremendous top 5 fantasy producer. This offseason, he's coming off shoulder surgery. He's entering with a brand new offensive coordinator. So there's going to be some changes too. But Kevin Stefanski will still be calling plays. So we can at least anticipate this to be an offense that still leans on the ground game, where they were 22nd in pass rate over expectation last year, and lean on that solid defense that they've got. Cleveland brought in multiple backups this year, and Jameis Winston, Tyler Huntley, in the event there's any setbacks for Watson. So like the offensive line, the supporting cast, and Watson's mobility, it makes him an interesting dart throw when we compare him to like any other quarterback in like that QB 16 through 22 range. Guys like Geno Smith, guys like Baker Mayfield, those type of quarterbacks. To me, he's worth the upside click in the event that he does capitalize on those things I just mentioned, the line, the cast, the mobility. If I were to bet a quarterback that would exceed his expectations in terms of ADP, it would be Watson. But just know that we haven't really seen it the last few seasons, and he's priced appropriately. Like, we're not expecting him to be a top 10 asset this year. If he were to do it, it would be more of a surprise. And for that reason, I think he's worth taking swings on in best ball, where you're rewarded for that type of risk. Even in redraft, if you like wait at the quarterback position, say you opt for fading the elite quarterback position this route, and you go for a late guy in round 12, say you get Jaden Daniels, you're hoping your eggs are in that basket. Perhaps getting a guy like Watson as your QB2 makes sense, where you're taking 2 upside swings, hoping that you can catch up with those guys that spent round 4, round 5 draft capital at QB.
Do you think, a secondary question on Deshaun Watson, because that final season in Houston, when he was a different performer, he led the league in passing yards, he led the league in yards per attempt, led the league in yards per completion. And we're talking not just a step down the last couple of years. We're talking he was 8.9 yards per attempt, down to 6.5 the last 2 years. Is that part of we're trying to get him comfortable? Is that part of the offense they're running? Is that I don't have the weapons? Is that I no longer trust myself? Like, how do you explain going from the guy who always throws past the sticks to kind of a dink and dunk guy?
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with the offense that they were running. Hopefully Ken Dorsey allows them to do a bit more than what they had done. Ken Dorsey coming from Buffalo, where we saw Josh Allen put up MVP-like seasons, been a consistent high-end producer. I'm hoping that we see that same kind of transformation. It depends on Watson's health, and it depends on the play calling, whether we get like David Njoku running like a 2-point yard average depth of throw. Like, we don't want him being that low ADOT guy. We want him in that 7 to 10 range. Let him get a chance to get moving vertically and then capitalize with some yak. Leaning on guys like Amari Cooper, getting a guy like Jerry Jeudy. I think it's very interesting to see how they assembled their offenses offseason. Very interested to see if Watson can finally take that step forward. That, like, I remember when the trade went down, people were like, in Dynasty, do I buy this guy? Is he worth the risk? And to date, it really hasn't been worth it. This is the offseason where we finally get that answer one way or the other, though.
And you mentioned earlier, Tyler, and we're talking to Tyler Beaker of fantasyguru.com. You mentioned earlier that we're kind of in that zone where, it's kind of not much really happening, right? We're all engaged, but and so we're getting all these random reports. And one of the random reports we got was from The Athletic, where Jalen Polk is going to be the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots. The Patriots receiving core is muddled. The quarterback room is kind of muddled. Like, this is an offense. Obviously, there's a lot of change. You lose the greatest coach of all time, things change. Talk to us about Polk and the receiving core of the Patriots. Is there a scenario where any of these guys, format-wise or player-wise, intrigues you in 2024?
That's a great question. The Patriots are a very veteran-heavy squad at wideout. A lot of role players, but not many standouts. And Polk, drafted in round 2, he was selected to be a difference maker. He showed at Washington that he can attack all levels of the field. He's a rock-solid blocker in the run game, something the Pats value. He's solid across the board, but I don't think he's exceptional at any one singular thing, which kind of made his draft pick a little bit surprising. But to me, he's the day one starter at the Z position, where I think he can fill out a role consistently picking up targets. Javon Baker is the other rookie wideout they grabbed in round 4. I think he can be a true X given his size and skill set. If he has a big camp, he'll be an interesting weapon from like a scheme perspective, as he brings more size than what a lot of these veterans they have on the roster offer. And then in terms of like a guy that you can actually lean on this year, it's Pop Douglas, Demario Douglas. Flashed last season from the slot, looks penciled in to be slotted there once again as the starter. So in 3 receiver sets, I think we're going to see Douglas in the slot and then both Polk and Baker eventually on the outsides flanking him. Fantasy-wise, Douglas is probably the only guy I'd be interested in, and he's more just not a lot to go on there. So overall, it's just not a very exciting offense, especially when we have some unknowns at QB.
When I say exciting offense, I think Carolina Panthers. It's another scenario where the receiving core is a little, the whole offense is obviously in flux with, Bryce Young trying to find his game here in year 2. There was a report from the Charlotte Observer that Adam Thielen's going to stick in the slot. Deontay Johnson and Leggett are going to be outside. I know we've talked about Leggett previously, but kind of break down those 3 receivers and what your expectations are for Thielen, Johnson, and Leggett this year.
Well, it starts at the top with Bryce Young, who's had a historically poor rookie season. The type of season where you look at the names around him, when you look at multiple statistics that he finished in, and it's terrifying. He'd be a true outlier to actually turn his career around. And he's got a new offensive coordinator here. Dave Canales is bringing in a mindset of stubbornly running the ball, quote unquote. That's a philosophy he's carried with from organization to organization. So it's really tough to be bullish on anyone in this passing attack, given what we've seen from Young, given what we're expecting in terms of play calling, and hoping for a year 2 leap. That said, Deontay is still a baller. He's a great player, should become the immediate number 1 target in this offense, and his route running skill set, a welcome addition to Carolina. Fantasy-wise, I think he carries a great floor, but the ceiling, I'm not expecting the Panthers to be top 12 whatsoever in terms of points scored. So the touchdowns are going to be variable for Deontay, which nothing new for him. So ideally, I'm kind of targeting him as a wide receiver 4 / flex. That's kind of where I'm kind of pigeonholing. And that's kind of where his ADP is right now. So that fits. Thielen, though, him being the slot receiver, nothing new there. He did a really great job last year with it. A lot of DFS weeks where he was super cheap and you got a lot of PPR production from him. He was wide receiver 11 through the first 11 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, before that offense just face planted. And Thielen was like, oh yeah, I'm over 30 years old. I can't do this anymore. But the depth chart here is Leggett, a guy who took 5 years to finally eclipse 200 yards in a season. Count me out. And it's Mingo, who had one of the worst yards per route run rates of any rookie receiver in the last decade. Count me out as well. Thielen, he should hold down that wide receiver 2 role. But again, this is a low ceiling. And I think he has very minimal value from a redraft perspective outside of bye-week flex or a super, super deep format.
Tyler Beaker, Ray Flowers here, talking over some situations, as they say in the NFL. I think that everyone says Marvin Harrison's the number 1 rookie wide receiver. Most people say that if Marvin Harrison wasn't there, Malik Nabors would be someone everyone's gushing over. He's just unfortunate he's behind Harrison. Everyone is taking Harrison first. Everyone believes Harrison's going to be better. Could Nabors actually end up being better than Marvin Harrison in a fantasy perspective this year? Is it insane to say that? What would have to happen for that to occur? Your thoughts on the Nabors-Harrison comparison when everyone basically says it's Harrison and Nabors is just a distant second?
Yeah, current ADP has one going at the 1-2 turn. That's Marvin Harrison. And then Malik Nabors going at the 2-3 turn. So like you said, ADP has a clear discrepancy between these guys, but I think it's absolutely possible for Malik to outscore Marvin. The Giants are extremely thin at wideout. Nabors has a versatile skill set where he can win inside, outside. He has that yak skill set to take anything to the house. And the Giants, they have an extremely weak run game. I'm not interested in Devin Singletary at all in fantasy this year. And I think given the backs they also have, they could become forced into becoming one-dimensional pretty frequently, leaning on the pass. They were 16th in pass rate over expectation last year. And when we look at that compared to the Cardinals, last year they were 31st in pass rate over expectation. So we're expecting Arizona to be a far more run-heavy. They've got a quality stable in backs relative to the Giants and James Conner and Trey Benson, along with Kyler. to keep the offense moving. Trey McBride, I think he's also earned his medal as a serious target earner. Number 2 option there. Not sure we can say the same for New York, where there's a guy that's carved out that role to that degree. I wouldn't bet like a full unit, like a betting unit on Malik Nabors over Marvin Harrison Jr., but I would rather take, like I flat out just rather take Malik Nabors over 850 yards. That's his betting line right now, and I think DraftKings right now.
Okay.
But you can bet rookie wide receiver yard leader, and Malik Nabors is plus 600 on DraftKings. I think I'd take a partial unit play on that one. It's worth considering.
I like that. And again, it's one of those scenarios that we'll see how it, we've had this before, right? We've had situations where 2 guys have come out at the same time and everyone's been wrong early. They've been wrong late. Sometimes sometimes they're both wrong. Let's hope that's not the case here, but it'll be fascinating to see how those 2 guys do, especially in year 1, because everyone is so convinced it's Marvin Harrison this year. Another
very
young
exciting prospects. Yes.
Yeah,
very exciting prospects. And
yeah,
you said like guys that were back to back, and I'm thinking immediately of Justin Jefferson and Jalen Reagor.
Right. Oh, how'd that turn out? Yeah. Woo. That was Woo. Sometimes, and that's and since you brought it up, and I say this, from time to time, we get, and we're the Discord room at fantasyguru.com for Dynasty has exploded for 2 months now. Every day there's questions in there, and everyone is so pick. And I always try to remind people, like, you got to remember, we're not great at this. In the fantasy space, we're not great at it. The people that get paid gazillions of dollars to run these NFL teams, they're not great at it. There's a lot of first-round busts in the NFL, not second, third, fourth. First-round busts in the NFL. And when you talk Jalen Reagor or Justin Jefferson, it's laughable now, but it wasn't at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a terrifying thing to have that much responsibility on your plate. Luckily for us, like I think even just getting 65% of your calls right is a tremendous season from a fantasy perspective. We're not capable, or we're not responsible though for a $1 billion franchise where those carry far more serious ramifications.
Yeah. You get demoted to having to work Friday nights, they get fired and lose their house. So it's a little different.
Yeah.
We're talking to Tyler Beaker of fantasyguru.com. Audric Estime, was brought into Denver. Obviously, there's skills there as the running back possesses. He had an issue with his knee. It's supposed to be no big deal. Sean Payton says he's going to be a full go for camp and everything like that. We've got Estime. We've got McLaughlin as a holdover. We've obviously got Javonte Williams. Do a run through of the backfield with the Broncos, because I think we all believe the backfield will be productive, and even was last year. But 3 guys were involved last year, P. Ryan, right? Is it going to be 3 guys again this year? And is that going to make the whole thing a muddled mess?
Yeah, this is a big question in the fantasy space at this time. And like you said, Sean Payton's backfields routinely delivered for us over the years. And it hasn't been the sole top back. It's gone running back by committee for multiple years. And his offenses have ranked top 11 in running back PPR fantasy points in 14 of 16 seasons of him being a head coach, including a top 6 finish last year with that Broncos group. Javonte, like he's now an extra year removed from that ACL injury. There's a chance he never gets back to the elusive prospect where he was like making a ton of missed tackles forced. But there's also the possibility he's far closer to 100% than he ever was in 2023, where Peyton kind of forced him out there. He's around 10 price right now. And to me, he's absolutely worth a stab at that price tag. Like you're getting a guy that could be highly involved, 200 to 250 opportunities, won't shock at all. McLaughlin, super exciting UDFA last year as a rookie. Among all backs with 50 plus carries, he ranked 4th in missed tackles forced per carry. He was top 5 in yards per out run. So we're getting a back that's explosive and can produce out of the backfield as a pass catcher, which is notable given like how often we see like these, when you look at Peyton's offenses, like the Saints pass catchers, the Alvin Kamara's, the Darren Sproles, those guys, there was a lot of pass catching. Pierre Thomas, there's a lot of pass catching skill sets. And I think McLaughlin's their best bet for that. He's also a super different back relative to Javonte, Estime, and Perine in terms of weight. He's just a much smaller back. Estime, he's that big bruiser back, the rookie that they selected, likely the future of the position. I think there's a realistic shot that Samaje Perine is a 53-man cut. Probably is not going to be contributing in special teams. So I think he'll be cut late in the season, leaving Estime as the direct backup on early downs for Javonte, with McLaughlin being that change of pace receiving back. Estime is kind of an exciting click. He's like a round 18 pick, where at the end of your draft, just take the shot. Why not? He's free.
Mm-hmm.
I said this about the Kansas City wide receivers on a previous recording here, but it also applies to this situation. I'm trying to leave my draft with at least one of these three guys of this Denver backfield because I think at least one of them is going to hit. And given the history of what we've seen from Peyton's offenses, I think it's a safe bet to make.
Tyler, we have had Jeff Mann's being pretty vocal about rankings and projections recently on the Sirius XM show. Again, it's 3 to 6 Monday through Friday, Eastern time. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of give your thoughts on projections versus rankings. A lot of people draft off projections. I have never done that myself. Maybe you do that. Do you trust projections? Do you trust rankings? Or is it all a shot in the dark? Like, how do you handle that? Because, again, a lot of people are very stridently in the camp of one or the other. Some people mix and match. How do you handle projections and rankings?
I'm very adamant on rankings over projections in terms of using it as a tool for drafting. But projections are an important part of the process. Like, start from the macro, like offensive play volume, run pass rate, leading trailing expectations based off win totals. There's like a lot of things to start in terms of the macro selection. Then we dive into the micro, which is like the player by player level analysis. So like if you project the Chiefs to do well, for Mahomes to throw for 4,200 yards, you need to account for those yards on a player by player level. Like add in the suspension, like Rashee Rice, or injury of like maybe Kelsey. This is 1 to 2 games. And you can quickly see how the numbers start to move around where we could see a breakout for Marquise Brown as a guy that could hit 1,000 yards out of necessity if we're projecting Mahomes at that 4,200 mark. Right. So what I like about projections is it really helps you account for everything, and it can really point toward under the radar players that may just be not players you're immediately gravitated toward. They're not the stars, but they're the ancillary options that could be more successful than what other people are kind of estimating. Rankings, though, I think they're far more helpful for fantasy drafters, particularly tier-based draft rankings, where you group similar positional players together. That's what I use for snake and auction drafts, and they can be catered in terms of moving players up and down due to a site's ADP to take advantage of mispriced players. If you have the time, this is to anyone listening here, I highly recommend going through everything we have on the site with our draft guide and then creating your own rankings customized to your own league settings. We'll have our own rankings posted on the site, but if you want to download them as a starting point, move up players up or down, I definitely advocate rankings over projections.
I think it's really interesting because the projections, again, it's wild to me. People do it in baseball too. They draft off projections. It's like, whoa, that's such a difficult thing to do. You just look at, I pulled it up as you were talking to tight ends last year. Add two touchdowns, to Kyle Pitts. He goes from tight end 12 to 9. Like just 2 tight ends. Like there's,
yep.
And when you're talking projections, is it 8 touchdowns you projected? Is it 6? And if every guy gets 8 or 9, you're great. What if every guy gets 5 or 6? You're not. So I agree with you. I think that having projections, to me, that was something that I thought was cool when I'd run to the bookstore and grab the magazine when I was 20 years old. Like, wow, Darryl Strawberry's going to do this, or Joe Montana's going to have this. But really, I think doing projections properly is very difficult because it's what you said, all this talk about game flow and the health of players. How many projection models have the top wideout missing 2 games on a team and the top tight end missing 2? They don't do that. They don't, right? And so it's like, I don't know. I'm glad that you said rankings. We didn't talk about this before the show. I'm glad you said rankings because I think they are more important. And I also think to follow up on that, the tiering decision is good too, because if you're saying I need one of these 5 tight ends, right? Mm-hmm. If you're basing it on projections, I think you miss that you just want one of these 5 tight ends where that 2 touchdown difference, they're all kind of the same guy. But if you're looking at projections and one guy's got the 9 touchdowns and one guy's got the 5 touchdowns, you think you're in a great spot, but really aren't they all kind of on the same tier? So a little bit more from you on the tiering side of things, Tyler. I think that's an important point.
Yeah. So I think tiering takes some time to do where you'll need to group players based off like expectations, but I often view this as like a U curve where let's just say for auctions or something like the tight ends 1 and 2, they're kind of priced up on the top left of the U. Tight end 3 might be priced on the bottom. And then as people realize the end of the tier is coming up, they start raising the price for tight end 4 and 5, knowing that it's a race to get those last 2 guys before we drop down a tier. The same can kind of be applied to a snake draft to a lesser degree. But that kind of explains how I'd like to group my players in terms of like what they offer relative to one another before there's a significant jump down, whether it be in expectations or projections. You can kind of use both of them to kind of make that demarcation. But tier-based drafting, I really recommend that because it can help you not panic when on the clock and thinking about, oh no, I'm missing out on the one wideout that I really liked. You can get a guy that maybe is like 95% of that player around the turn and just wait a little bit longer and still get a quality player.
Go to fantasyguru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. You can get that package you see on the screen for the seasonal set of things. You can get Tyler Beaker's work. He's heavily involved there, writing about best ball, writing player profiles for the youngsters, answering questions in Discord. He's often on the live stream, which comes up on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock Eastern time, everywhere at the site. You mentioned that the betting guide is going to be posting here in a couple of weeks. What else are you working on in short order, Tyler, that folks can look forward to?
Yeah, that's primarily it. Working on a wide receiver versus coverage scheme article, which will cover like the old wide receiver versus cornerback matchups, kind of advancing that into more of a coverage scheme. Like wide receiver, how does it fare versus cover 2 versus cover 3? How often these defenses are expected to deploy them this year, which kind of takes some estimation on my behalf. But it's a really fun process. I just finished the article. It should be posted shortly. But that's another big project that I've been working on.
He's Tyler Beaker. He normally joins us on Thursdays. He did step up and join us Wednesday this week. Armando Marsaal is normally on today. We'll be on tomorrow. So we'll have Armando on Thursday. We'll have Russell Clay on Friday. Tyler, thank you so much for jumping on. Great visit as always. Really appreciate it. Go get to answering those questions and helping those folks out at fantasyguru.com. And we'll see you again in about a week.
Will do. Thanks for having me on, Ray.
You got it. Tyler Beaker of fantasyguru.com. All right, before we let you go here, everybody, let's go to the comment section. I see one comment here from Angelo. Let's hit that before we close things down here on the show. Is Devin Williams worth a stash? He's on my wire and should be back soon. Absolutely, without question, Devin Williams is worth a stash. I assume since he's available, you don't have IL spots, because if you have IL spots, I would just, again, assume that someone has held on to him this whole time. If you have to burn a spot on your bench for a couple of weeks, I'm willing to take that chance. McGill has been terrific for the Brewers, but every indication is that McGill will go into a setup role and that Devin Williams will return to work in the ninth inning for the Brewers when he's healthy. As you noted, he's very close to returning. It should happen within the first week that we're back here. In fact, if he's activated by Monday, I would not be surprised at all coming back from that back issue. He's too good, has been too effective, and his role is too important to the team, in my opinion, if you're in a traditional 5x5 setup, to leave him on the waiver wire. So yes, I would add Devin Williams. I think he's a very good addition at this point in time. Angelo, thank you for the question. And thanks you all for all of you watching today. I want to thank Tyler Beaker for stepping up and joining us today. I want to thank you all for being here. The show, Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 9 o'clock Pacific Time, a.m. in the morning. You can find me with Jeff Manns on Wednesdays, which is today. I'll be on from 3 to 6 Eastern with him later today. That show is Monday through Friday on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 3 to 6. So lots going on. And please sign up for the product again. We really have a great series of users to interact with. Got a great series of analysts to interact with. Got tons of information for all the formats you can possibly imagine. PPR, non-PPR, Dynasty, Rookie, IDP, Best Ball, all that stuff over at fantasyguru.com. We'll be back tomorrow when we finish up our look at the first half in baseball, talking relief pitchers. I'm going to head over to the site right now and post the accompanying starting pitcher piece for the podcast/show that you just watched here on Wednesday. I'm Ray Flowers. Thanks to Tyler Beaker. You've been watching Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.